The day I corrected a $50 million contract, I was 12 years old and wiping someone else's spilled coffee off a hotel carpet. 30 seconds earlier, a billionaire had been screaming at my mom like she was nothing. 30 seconds later, I was speaking perfect Dutch in a luxury hallway and putting a giant target on my own back. If it were you, and your kid stepped into a scene like that, would you have dragged them away? Or let them talk? My name is Lana. I'm the daughter of a black hotel maid, and for 2 years I ran a quiet investigation inside a place where people like us were supposed to just keep our heads down and scrub. I didn't plan on taking down a money laundering scheme or getting the FBI involved. At first, I just wanted one simple thing. I wanted the world to see my mom the way I saw her, not the way her name tag and uniform tried to define her. Let me take you back to that morning, because that's when everything stopped being theoretical and became very, very real. We were at the Grand Plaza, one of those luxury hotels in Manhattan that smells like polished wood, expensive perfume, and power. Marble floors, shiny elevators, suitcases that cost more than our entire apartment. My mom, Conk, had worked there for 8 years. She cleaned rooms, scrubbed bathrooms, took abuse with a smile. What most people never knew was that she had a master's degree in French literature from USP in Brazil and spoke 5 languages fluently. To most managers, though, she was just the cleaning lady from 14B. It was a big day. The owner of the whole hotel chain, Richard Vanderberg, was in the building for a massive meeting with Dutch partners. We're talking about a contract worth $50 million. When numbers get that big, they stop feeling like money and start feeling like magic tricks. But bad magic tricks can go wrong very fast. The Dutch team was in the conference room. Vanderberg was at the table, and their interpreter, the one they were paying crazy money to, was making a mess of the language. I know that because I was in the hallway outside doing homework, which really meant listening to every word I could catch through the door. I heard Dutch words twisted into the wrong register slang, thrown into formal sentences, jokes that weren't translating, and a tone that in Dutch business culture basically screams disrespect. I knew that from books from my mom, from all the nerdy research I did in the public library, while other kids watched cartoons. You know what I mean, right? Some kids binge shows, I binged dictionaries. For 15 minutes, I listened to a slow-motion train wreck. Then the door slammed open. Vanderberg exploded out of that conference room like a storm in an expensive suit. Red face, clenched jaw. Voice raised so loud it bounced off the marble. And who did he see first in that hallway? Not the interpreter. Not the manager. My mom holding a tray of fresh coffee for the meeting. Do you people never get anything right in this place? He shouted. Not even looking her in the eyes, just waving his hand like she was part of the carpet. First the logistics, then the rooms, now this disaster. My mom froze. She doesn't cry easily. She's one of those strong people who swallow rage so deep it shows up later as tired eyes and stiff shoulders. But I saw that flicker. Humiliation hurt that familiar. Here we go again feeling, and I stepped forward. It wasn't brave. It wasn't planned. It was like my brain had had enough, and my mouth went full autopilot before fear caught up. Sorry to interrupt, sir, I said, in Dutch, but I believe there has been a misunderstanding in the translation of the contract. Silence, the kind that makes every sound suddenly too loud. Somewhere an elevator dinged. A phone buzzed. Nobody moved. Vanderberg turned, scanning the hallway, like he was trying to locate where the Dutch comment had come from. His eyes landed on me. Skinny black girl, cheap backpack sneakers that had seen better years. Definitely not on the guest list. What did you say he asked in English? I repeated it in Dutch, calmer this time. Same sentence, correct formal level, neutral accent, the way the books and practice had taught me. He stopped yelling so fast it was almost funny. Behind him stood Thompson, the hotel manager in his perfect suit, and Williams, the cleaning supervisor, with a permanent smirk. They knew me. I was the kid they pretended not to see, the one who waited in staff rooms with a book while my mom finished her shift, the one who raised her hand a little too fast at school and used big words according to people who didn't like being corrected. Thompson jumped in first, because that's what people like him do when they feel control slipping. They talk. "Mr. Vanderberg," he said with this fake little laugh. "She's just the cleaning lady's daughter. She doesn't understand what's going on. Kids pick up words from TV. Let's get back to the real negotiations." But Vanderberg kept his eyes on me. "Keep talking," he said, switching to Dutch again. In Dutch, "Tell me exactly what you think is wrong." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips, but I forced myself to breathe and focus on the words. I explained that the interpreter had mixed informal expressions with formal clauses, that some of the slang he used would come across as childish or disrespectful in Rotterdam business circles, that certain idioms should never be used in contracts. I mentioned the exact paragraph that would sound insulting to them. Then I did something that scared me more than speaking Dutch to a billionaire. I switched to Portuguese. "My mother speaks 5 languages and has a master's degree from USP. I said, my voice a little steadier now. "Maybe you should ask why she cleans bathrooms instead of working in your international department." Thompson's smile cracked for a second. Then he laughed it off. But it wasn't the same laugh as before. There was panic under it. "Sir, children say all kinds of things," he muttered. "We can't take this seriously. Let's not waste your time with—" But again, Vanderberg didn't look at him. He just watched me like he was trying to figure out whether this was some elaborate prank. Something in my expression must have reminded him of himself, because he finally said, "Is this true? Your mother sent suggestions about translations." I nodded. "Over the last 2 years, she sent 7 memos to the international department, all ignored. And I have copies." Now he was interested. "Copies?" "Yes, sir," I said. "People don't pay attention to what the maid's daughter prints or what she takes out of the trash." Pattern interrupt. That's the thing about being invisible. You become the perfect witness. I pulled a pink school folder out of my backpack. It had a unicorn sticker half peeled off the front, totally harmless on the outside. Inside it was dynamite. Vanderberg held out his hand. I handed him the folder. He flipped through the memos one by one. My mom's messages were long, detailed, written in professional Portuguese and English. She pointed out repeated translation mistakes, explained cultural nuances for Dutch, Japanese, French clients, politely suggested improvements, and even offered to help with language training if they wanted. Then came the responses. "Stay in your role and avoid future embarrassment. Cleaning staffer, not qualified to comment on business matters. This kind of input is not appropriate from your position." Vanderberg read one out loud. "Stay in your role and avoid future embarrassment." He repeated, his voice colder now. He turned the printed email so we could all see the signature at the bottom. Thompson. Thompson's face lost some color. "Sir, that is out of context. This is part of a larger—" And this one, Vanderberg continued flipping pages. Here she warns about a problem with our Japanese partners 3 weeks before we lost $2 million because of a cultural misunderstanding. You responded, "This matter is above your pay grade. Do not send similar emails again." He looked up slowly. $2 million lost. After a warning from a cleaning lady you told to stay in her role. Interesting. Williams, the cleaning supervisor, started to sweat. He knew what was coming next, even if he didn't know how much I had. "You're making it sound worse than it was," he snapped. "She never said any of this in person. She just cleans?" "She's always been. I have recordings," I said quietly. I pulled out my phone. Not the latest model, just an old, slightly cracked device my mom had given me when she upgraded to another old, slightly cracked device. I hit play. Williams's voice filled the hallway. There was some background noise from the locker room. Metal doors closing, distant chatter, but his words were clear. No matter what degree she has, people like that belong in cleaning. They can study as much as they want, but some things never change. My mom closed her eyes. I knew she remembered that day. She had come home and scrubbed her hands in the sink, like she was trying to wash off more than just cleaning chemicals. Vanderberg's jaw clenched hard enough that I could see the muscles twitch. "When was this recorded?" he asked me. "Last week," I said. "In the women's locker room, while my mom was changing clothes after the double shift that Ms. Williams forced her to work as disciplinary punishment." Williams opened her mouth, but nothing respectable came out, so she shut it again. "And there's more," I added, because at this point, I figured there was no going back anyway. "You might want to ask Thompson about his niece Jessica, the one who's supposedly studying in Europe. She actually got fired from the front desk for stealing money from the safe. He paid the money back out of his own pocket and made up the story about Europe so you wouldn't find out. I have the bank statements. You should have seen Thompson's face then. You know that look when someone realizes the person they thought was a harmless kid is actually holding their entire career in a school folder and a cheap phone? Yeah, that look. How do you have those statements?" Vanderberg asked. Really curious now. "Because the woman in the kitchen who peels potatoes for 12 hours a day speaks Russian and has training in international cuisine," I said. "And she noticed some documents that didn't match the story. And the maintenance guy who just fixes things was an engineer in Venezuela, and he saw some late-night access to your financial systems that didn't make sense. And none of you ever noticed that the invisible people were watching you." For a second, nobody moved. Then Vanderberg straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and said, "You two, out of my office, now." He was talking to Thompson and Williams. They started to protest. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. This child is being manipulated. We should call social services. Maybe her mother is influencing her." But he didn't even look at them. He just stared at the unicorn folder like it contained a bomb. And it did. They left with their faces tight and their bodies stiff. But I knew this wasn't over. Not for them. Not for me. When the door finally closed behind them, he looked at me and said, "You said you've been documenting things for 2 years. Why?" "Because my mother taught me that injustice only survives when people pretend not to see it," I answered. "And I see everything." That was the first victory. But it was also the moment I realized something else. I was sitting on a lot more than evidence of discrimination. I was sitting on a crime scene. 3 days later, the whole hotel felt like it was holding its breath. Thompson had been suspended pending investigation. Williams had been demoted to supervising only the night shift. On paper, everything looked calm. In reality, people were whispering in hallways, side-eyeing each other in the elevator, avoiding certain topics in staff rooms. And Williams was angry. She cornered my mom in the locker room one night. My mom had just finished changing after another long day, and I had convinced her to keep her phone in her pocket with the recorder app running just in case. "You have no idea what you've done," Williams hissed, thinking nobody could hear. "Your stuck-up little girl may have impressed the boss, but that's not going to change anything here. People like you always end up back where they belong." My mom stayed quiet. She always did in moments like that. Not because she was weak, but because there's a difference between being silent and being powerless. She was never powerless, not really. She had me. She had her mind, and now she had recordings. Williams walked out feeling like she'd won some small battle. She had no idea she'd just given me ammunition for the war. Meanwhile, Vanderberg had set up an internal commission to investigate the discrimination complaint. On the surface, that sounded great. Meetings reports, maybe some training modules. You know how companies do damage control. But I had been reading. I knew corporate investigations could be shaped, softened, redirected. A few carefully chosen independent voices, a couple of vague apologies, and suddenly it becomes a misunderstanding instead of a pattern. So while the official commission was doing whatever internal commissions do, my network kept working. Carmen in the laundry room kept pulling interesting papers out of VIP suit pockets, crumpled receipts, printed emails, bank confirmations that had been forgotten in jackets. Roberto watched which computers stayed on late, which accounts were accessed at strange hours. The journalism student at the front desk started asking innocent questions at the bar, listening to loose talk from tipsy executives. We had our own investigation, and it was not in the employee handbook. One day, standing in front of a staff list posted on the wall, I noticed something that wouldn't let go of my brain. There were names printed there that I had never heard in my life. James Patterson, night maintenance. Michelle Roberts, administrative assistant. Anthony Smith, logistics coordinator. Now hotels are like small towns. You see the same faces even if you don't know all the names. You know who works front desk, who fixes broken locks, who brings extra towels. I had spent more time in those hallways than some managers, and I had never seen those people. "Hey, Carmen," I asked later that day in the laundry room. "Do you know a James Patterson? Or Michelle Roberts?" She frowned. Thought about it, shook her head. "No. I know every shirt that comes through here. No name tags like that. No uniforms with those names." I went to Roberto. "Can you check something for me?" I asked. "These names, do they exist in the system?" He logged in with his maintenance access. Searched. And there they were, those names with employee numbers, positions. Salaries. $3,000, $3,500, $5,000 a month. Every month. For years. I felt my stomach drop. "Do you ever see them?" I asked. "Never," he said. "And I notice who works here. I have to. I fix everything they break." That night, I spread out all the documents on our kitchen table. Staff lists, screenshots, pay records, my mom's memos, the unicorn folder, my notebook with dates and quotes. I started drawing lines between names. Dates, amounts. 47 names. 47 people who didn't exist in real life, but showed up every month on the payroll. I did the math. I added up the salaries. Over 5 years, it went over $2 million. That was the twist. This was never just about racism. Racism was the tool. By keeping highly educated multilingual people like my mom in the bathrooms. By promoting people like Williams, who would follow orders and shut down questions by mocking anyone who acted above their position. Thompson had built the perfect cover for a money laundering scheme. Invisible people don't get invited to budget meetings. They don't get logins to payroll systems. They don't get to question why some employee never shows up for a single shift. Discrimination wasn't just cruelty here. It was a strategy. If it were you and you were 12, would you stop there and hope the company fixed it quietly? Or would you push further and risk everything? I didn't sleep much for a few nights. I went to the library and checked out books I probably wasn't old enough to borrow. Criminal law, forensic accounting, articles about labor rights, explainers about money laundering schemes. The librarian gave me that. "Are you sure look a lot?" I just smiled and said, "Yes, ma'am." The more I read, the clearer it became. If I didn't document this right, if I didn't play it perfectly, they could destroy the evidence and destroy us along with it. Then something happened that confirmed my worst fear. Thompson found out I knew about the ghost employees. I'm not sure how. Maybe someone mentioned my questions. Maybe he saw one of my printed sheets. Maybe he simply realized I wasn't going to stop at emails and insults. He called my mom into his office. He talked about concerns. He said I seemed obsessed. He suggested that a child with such elaborate fantasies might need professional help. That for her own good, social services, or a psychologist, should get involved. He used pretty words, but what he really meant was, "We're going to paint your daughter as unstable, so nobody believes her." My mom came home that night with eyes that looked older than they had that morning. She told me what he'd said. I listened, and I felt this wave of cold go through me. Because that's the move right there. If you can't destroy the evidence, destroy the witness. So I realized I needed someone bigger than the hotel. I needed the law. The next day, I used the direct number Vanderberg had given my mom after that first hallway moment. I sat on the edge of my bed, my notes open, my hands shaking, and called the billionaire again. "Mr. Vanderberg," I said when he picked up, "this is Lana, the girl who talked to you about the Dutch contract." He sounded tired, like he had been putting out fires for days. "Yes, Lana. Is your mother all right? Have there been any issues because of what happened?" "Yes," I said. "And no, she's fine for now. But that's not why I'm calling. I need to talk to you about something more serious than discrimination. It has to do with money laundering." There was a long pause on the other end. You could hear the shift. Suddenly, this wasn't just a PR problem to him. This was criminal. "What are you talking about?" he asked slowly. I laid it out methodically the way I had practiced in my head. The ghost employees, the fake identities, the salaries between $3,000 and $5,000, the $2 million plus stolen over 5 years. I mentioned Carmen's documents, Roberto's screenshots, the mismatch between the staff list and reality, the conversations I had recorded where Thompson and Williams literally talked about making the cleaning staff the scapegoats if anything ever got discovered. "Do you have proof?" he finally asked. "Yes," I said. "A lot of it. Enough that if I'm wrong, I'll look crazy. But if I'm right, you're going to need more than an internal commission." He was quiet again. "Why didn't you come to me with this earlier?" he asked. "Because I didn't know if you were part of it," I answered. "My mom taught me something. If you're going to accuse someone of corruption, you should also be able to prove they didn't know, or you're just guessing. You only inherited this hotel 2 years ago, and most of this started before that. So I waited until I had enough to know which side you were on." He let out a slow breath. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m., he said. "Emergency board meeting. Bring everything you have." "I will," I said. And then I did something he didn't ask me to do. That night, after my mom went to bed, I opened our old laptop connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi that sometimes worked and wrote an email. Subject line: "Luxury hotel in Manhattan uses racial discrimination to cover up $2 million money laundering scheme." I attached some of the evidence, a few anonymized screenshots, some redacted emails, enough recordings to prove this wasn't some kid's fantasy. Not everything, but enough to make any serious person pay attention. And I sent it to 3 investigative journalists, 2 federal prosecutors, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. At the bottom I wrote, "Internal investigation takes place tomorrow at 10 a.m. You may want to take a look. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind." The next morning, Thompson walked into the boardroom like a man who thought he still owned the narrative. He had his papers, his prepared speech. I could almost hear the lines he was going to use. Smear campaign, disgruntled employees, miscommunication. He was ready to make me sound like a troubled kid being used by my mom. He was ready to make my mom sound like a jealous worker inventing persecution because she didn't get promoted. "Good morning," Thompson Vanderberg said as he came in. His voice was calm, but there was this undercurrent like he was tired of being lied to. "I hope you've brought convincing explanations." "Sir," after carefully reviewing the situation, Thompson began, "I believe we've been the victims of a malicious campaign, orchestrated by dissatisfied staff. The girl has clearly been instructed to. The girl I said from the doorway has a name, and she brought friends." I walked in with a cardboard box and my laptop. Behind me were Carmen, Roberto, and 6 other workers. People Thompson had bullied, ignored, threatened for years. Laundry worker, kitchen staff, Night porter, receptionist. People he never imagined would stand on this side of the table. You could see the panic in his eyes when he realized the invisible ones had stepped into the spotlight. "What is this?" he snapped. "Mr. Vanderberg, we cannot—" "Junior employees to interrupt a board meeting, this is highly inappropriate." "The junior employees," I said, setting my laptop on the table, "are the only reason you don't own this company right now. Because while you were underestimating them, they were watching you." I connected the laptop to the big screen. The first thing that appeared was a spreadsheet. Names, employee IDs, positions, start dates, monthly salaries, totals. 47 ghost employees, I said. "That's what you created, Mr. Thompson. People who exist only on paper, but get paid for real. Over 5 years, that's $2,300,000, give or take. All routed into accounts you control." "That's a lie," he sputtered. "You hacked the system. You don't have that kind of access. This is all fabricated." "Roberto has maintenance access to the system," I replied. He took the screenshots. "Carmen intercepted bank documents you forgot in your suit." And I stitched it all together like a puzzle. It's hard to fake a puzzle when every piece comes from a different person who doesn't know the others are talking. I clicked. Bank transactions appeared. Same pattern month after month. Ghost employee gets paid. Money lands in an account that leads back to one person. His name was on the screen more times than he wanted to admit. He tried one more angle. "This is illegal data theft," he barked. "These people broke privacy rules. They should be fired. This entire meeting is compromised." I clicked again. His own voice filled the room. "Williams, you need to make sure that Black woman and her daughter don't ask any more questions. If they find out about the ghost employees, we're done for. Use any excuse. Insubordination, inappropriate behavior, whatever. People like them are easy to discredit." Williams flinched so hard her chair creaked. "This is taken out of context," she blurted. "A child couldn't possibly. A child with an IQ of 165 and 2 years of planning can do a lot," I said. "And she doesn't work alone." Then I pulled up the timesheets, rows and columns, dates and numbers. "These are the disciplinary shifts cleaning staff were forced to work," I said. "Unpaid. Marked as corrective action. Here's how many extra hours my mother worked in the last 2 years without pay. 847. Here's Carmen, 1,200 hours. Here's Rosa from the kitchen, 1,500 hours. All those hours were later booked in the system as time worked by ghost employees. So not only did you steal money from the company, you stole labor from the workers and used them to cover your tracks." Williams' voice shook. "They took extra shifts voluntarily. We never forced." Carmen stepped forward, her hand slightly trembling, but her voice firm. "You said if we refused, people like us would not find work anywhere in the city," she said. "You said you would make sure of it," Roberto added quietly. "And every time a maintenance log showed the executive computers accessing outside bank accounts late at night, you told me to delete the record. I saved copies. All of them." I clicked again. Another recording played. Williams' voice once more. "That little black girl and her daughter think they're special because they can speak languages. I'm going to show them their place in this society. People like that need to learn not to meddle where they're not wanted." Silence. Again, broken only by the sound of the door opening. 3 men in suits walked in holding out badges. "Mr. Vanderberg," the oldest one said. "We received an extremely well-documented report last night regarding possible fraud, money laundering, forced unpaid labor, and racially motivated discrimination at this hotel. We'd like to review some of the evidence and ask a few questions." Thompson lost it. "This is insane," he shouted. "You can't just barge into a private meeting based on lies from a child and a handful of angry workers." The agent looked at his tablet. "Actually," he said, "this complaint includes dates, documents, audio recordings, system logs, and cross-referenced payroll data. It is more organized than some reports prepared by law firms. Whoever compiled this knows the legal system very well. Vanderberg turned to me slowly. "How did you know they would show up?" he asked. "Because I called them," I said. Systematic racial discrimination is a federal crime. Forcing people to work unpaid double shifts as punishment is a federal crime. Money laundering through ghost employees is a federal crime. And I've spent the last 2 years collecting evidence of all three. The agents moved toward Thompson and Williams. "Mr. Thompson." Ms. Williams, the older one, said, "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Thompson looked at me with pure hatred. "You're just a kid," he spat. "You don't understand how the world really works." I met his eyes, and for the first time I let myself smile a little. "I understand the world works with evidence," I said, "and I spent 2 years collecting evidence about how people like you really work." They handcuffed him and Williams right there in that expensive boardroom under the soft lights and the framed art. As they were led out, Williams started crying, saying she had just followed orders. Carmen watched, Rosa watched, my mom watched. None of us smiled. We were too tired for celebration. It felt less like victory and more like finally dropping a weight you've been carrying for so long. You forgot how heavy it was. Through the glass walls, we could see guests in the lobby, checking in rolling suitcases across the floor, ordering drinks at the bar. People who had no idea that upstairs, a 12-year-old and a group of invisible employees had just flipped the entire power structure on its head. When the door closed behind the agents, the room was quiet again. Vanderberg sat down slowly, looked at me, then at my mom. "You orchestrated this," he said to me. "From the moment you showed me those memos in the hallway." "Not exactly," I replied. "I started orchestrating this the day Ms. Williams told my mom she should know her place. I was 10. I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself I would figure it out. Today, we found out what her place really is." He frowned. "Where?" "In a prison cell," I said. "And my mom's place is in an office with a window doing the work she's actually qualified for." "Yeah." That happened. Over the next months, things moved fast. The story didn't stay inside that boardroom. The journalists who got my email came. They wrote articles, did segments on TV. 12-year-old girl exposes money laundering and racism at luxury hotel. My face, my mom's face. Even my unicorn folder ended up on screens across the country. Federal prosecutors dug deeper. They found that what happened at the Grand Plaza wasn't just one bad manager and one racist supervisor. It was a symptom. Other hotels, other ghost employees, other invisible workers who knew more than anyone ever asked them. 6 months later, our lives looked very different. My mom didn't wear a cleaning uniform anymore. She wore business clothes and walked into the Grand Plaza through the front entrance. Her badge now read, Director of International Relations. Her salary went from barely enough to survive to $15,000 a month. She sat at tables where decisions were made, speaking the languages she mastered long before she mastered industrial cleaning supplies. I didn't sit in the staff room doing homework. I went to a school for gifted kids completely paid for by the company as an investment in exceptional talent. That's how they phrased it. For me, it was simple. For the first time, my curiosity felt like a gift, not a problem. Thompson was sentenced to 8 years in prison for fraud and money laundering. Williams got 4 years for forced labor and racial discrimination. Part of their assets were seized to compensate the workers they had exploited. They lost their homes the same way they had tried to threaten my mom and Carmen and Rosa with losing theirs. And here's the part the universe added. Like it has a sense of humor. One of the follow-up news stories showed Thompson in prison overalls, wearing gloves holding a brush cleaning toilets. The same job he had forced highly qualified people to do, while he sat in his office moving fake money around a screen. Poetic irony, right? But the biggest change wasn't just individual punishment. It was structural. Vanderberg launched something he called the Lana Santos program across the entire hotel chain. It wasn't really about me, but my name was on it, so I took that seriously. The program did one simple thing. It audited talent. It looked at everyone in low-level positions and checked their real skills. Degrees, languages, experience. If someone like my mom was cleaning rooms with a master's degree and 5 languages that became a problem to fix, not an asset to ignore, in 1 year, 847 employees were reclassified or promoted into positions that matched their abilities. Cooks who were actually trained chefs, laundry workers with accounting degrees, night porters who had studied IT. They cut down on outsourcing and saved about $12 million as a side effect. You know what that means, right? Discrimination wasn't just wrong, it was expensive. One evening, months after everything exploded, my mom and I sat in her new office. The city lights reflected in the glass behind her. She had a framed photo of us on her desk next to a stack of multilingual contracts she was reviewing for a meeting. "Do you know what the best part of all this was for me?" she asked. I thought she would say the money, or the job title, or the justice. It wasn't revenge, she said. It was realizing our dignity never depended on their recognition. We were the same people all along. They were just blind. I smiled. For me, it was proving that the success they said was impossible for us was actually the best revenge. So yeah, that's my story. The short version of a long 2-year war that started with a hallway insult and ended with FBI agents in suits walking into a boardroom. But I want to leave you with something more than just a wow, cool story. Let me ask you this. How many people like my mom do you think are around you right now? At your job, your school, your neighborhood? How many folks are cleaning offices? Who could be leading teams? How many are flipping burgers? Who could run the numbers? How many are invisible to you because someone decided their place based on the color of their skin, their accent, their country of birth, or the job they took to survive? And here's the uncomfortable part. If a 12-year-old girl can see all that and build a case for years in the shadows, what does it say about the people who were paid 6 figures to manage talent and didn't notice a thing? Do you think it's just a few bad actors? Or do you think the system is built to keep certain people scrubbing floors, while others make money off their silence? I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning, still messing up, still reading books way above my grade level, and asking way too many questions. You know what I mean. But I do know this. Underestimating someone because of their job, their skin, or their accent doesn't just hurt them. It can blow up in your face. Sometimes in the form of a lawsuit, sometimes as an FBI raid, and sometimes as a quiet, determined kid who refuses to know her place. So if this story made you mad, or made you hopeful, or made you look at the cleaning staff or the cashier at your store a little differently today, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments. If you were in my shoes at 10, 11, 12, watching your mom being humiliated and ignored, would you have risked everything and spoken up? Or would you have stayed quiet to protect her job? There's no easy answer. Be honest. And if you've ever been in my mom's position, or Carmen's, or Roberto's, overqualified, underestimated, treated like you should stay in your lane while people with half your skills climb over you, I want to hear your story too. What did you do? Are you still fighting? Did you ever get your moment of justice? Or are you still waiting for it? Drop it below. Argue with me. Agree with me. Tell me I was reckless or tell me I was right. Because these aren't just dramatic stories. They're real questions about what kind of society we want to live in. If this hits something in you, hit like, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. so we can keep talking about the things most people would rather keep behind closed doors. Because sometimes, justice doesn't walk in with a briefcase and a law degree. Sometimes it walks in a cheap hoodie with a unicorn folder, a cracked phone, and a quiet little voice that says, "Actually, I have the receipts."